Awesome, yeah. Hey guys, welcome to Flutter and Dart, mobile apps on different platforms. So yeah, today we're going to be learning about Dart, which is the language used by Flutter. And so yeah, let's just get into it. So yeah, if you haven't already, you can check in right now. The check-in code is we learn Flutter. But of course, this is for live people. Okay, so what is Flutter? And so Flutter is an open source mobile UI, like SDK. So basically what that means is like it's a software development like kit to make mobile like UIs like pretty basically. And so but it's like a whole entire development kit. So you can it goes like it's gigantic. So you'll see once we get into the later workshops, it's quite a lot. So what we're doing here is starting with just the language. So yeah, as we see right now, like the current version of Flutter will allow like it to be possible to have iOS and Android with one code base, which is like extremely useful, right? You don't have to like learn how to use Xcode or like, um, I mean, I guess that's just specific for iOS. But yeah, so like with this, you can do both. But then Flutter 2, you can do even more actually. Flutter 2 came out, I think, in March of 2021. I might just be wrong. It could have been last year, but it was definitely March. So yeah, Dart is an object-oriented programming language. So if you're familiar with Java, it's pretty similar. You don't have to worry about like memory or anything like that, but all variables are just objects, and we're kind of just interacting with objects. So yeah, like this says, you can't, it's like pretty legendary that you can create two apps with one code base. Kind of epic. So yeah, I just want to start off like before we get into Dart with like the idea of Flutter. And so, oh yeah, by the way, if you have any questions, you can ask. But anyway, so the idea of Flutter is that you make custom widgets and you make it on the UI. And it's just like UI equals user interface, just by the way. So yeah, you have these widgets and they kind of just make like this tree-like structure. So you have like my app of every Flutter project has this, right? And you can like have different widgets to go downwards. In pretty typical, you'd see scaffold. Scaffold will have like an app bar, right, with some text. Or you'd have like in the middle, you'd have something called center with a column, which has text. Or you'd have this floating action button, which, as you can imagine, is just a floating action button, kind of similar to this, right? And so, yeah, so that's basically the idea of Flutter, is just to make a bunch of widgets. And so, like, because you can use all the default styles and you'll have like, you won't have to do like CSS. You'll have like what it actually like. It'll look pretty default, but I still think that the apps look really good anyway with just like the default widgets, but you can make your own widgets, and we'll go into that in later lecture. I mean, later workshops. So yeah, also just side note, Flutter has some similarities to React in that like you can use states to like update certain specific parts of the tree. So let's say like this text is a timer or something, right? Let's say that it was making calls to get the time for some reason. What you'd want to do is have like a state within the app bar to keep track of that, and the state will change, so that will change your text basically. But we'll get into that again later. So here we go. Do they inherit? That's a great question. So I'm pretty sure that this is kind of like an extending tree. So like if you're familiar with Java, you use extends to inherit, or you actually, sorry, it's specifically in Dart. Every class that you instantiate, if you say implement, like it can be implementable. It's like they're all interfaces technically. So yeah, if you're familiar with interfaces, right, you inherit all of the methods and you implement them. But you'll see extends, so you don't have to implement like every single method, right? all classes are also yeah. So yeah, as Gary said, classes are interfaces. We'll get into that later. But yeah, I see widgets just everywhere, right? So yeah, it is kind of overwhelming. There's like a ton of widgets, but I think it's kind of nice just because you can see exactly where everything comes from and like where it inherits from. So yeah, some advantages and disadvantages. So this is the advantages and this is the disadvantages. There's just like small ones, right? So advantage, it's cross-platform, right? You said before, iOS and Android. You can hot reload like in React, and I'm sure most other languages, I mean frameworks. It's extremely customizable with fast rendering and separates UI from native control. So by doing this, you're able to have cross-platform. So these are kind of the same, but yeah, it'll have consistency rather than, let's say that you wanted to make a button, but a button in iOS and a button in Android are different, right? So you want to have consistency, so you make them in Flutter. And so yeah, some disadvantages, it's still somewhat new, like I said, like Flutter 2 literally just came out, so it's kind of insane. Another disadvantage is it's like super space heavy, and you guys will see this when you download it. And then kind of also a disadvantage is the fact that it doesn't use a native design, because you'll have like while you have consistency, it's still like not exactly like how like iOS makes it, for example. Like it's not an iOS app. So yeah, I think, oh, is it better than React Native in any way? So that's a good question. I think Garrett has some, yeah, Garrett has some preference.
Yeah, so I don't really like React Native because it's got some like really weird bugs and stuff that you always run into. Um, and like writing CSS, I personally don't like doing that, and you kind of have to do that for React Native. So Flutter is just like a different way of solving the same problem that I happen to like more. But if you like React Native, then that's on you. It's not like a better system.
Yeah, no, totally. Um, yeah, I mean, in my opinion, like the greatest preference would be just because in Flutter you can learn. I mean, you can eventually it'll have Flutter 2, and you can have it be completely cross-platform. I think that's pretty cool. But yeah, React Native. Wait, I guess React Native is. Oh, my bad. Yeah, it totally is preference then. If you want to deal with CSS, then you could do React Native. That's fine. So yeah, I'm gonna keep going. So yeah, Dart. We're starting. Let's go. Whoops. So I'm gonna put this link in the chat actually. So basically what this is like a playground. Um, and yeah, you just use it to code in Dart. There are some limitations, but this is like the official um, like from Flutter website, basically. They made this. And so yeah, basically what we're gonna be doing, there's gonna be Kahoot at the end as well, but I didn't write that. But yeah, we're gonna be going over variables, types, functions, control flow, classes library, and async. So again, we're going to do like very simple tasks so that you can just have time to, is the Kahoot graded? Good question. You can have time to like actually play with it, and that's a fun way to learn. So yeah, this wall of text is basically just there are specifics. If you're familiar with Java, that it's pretty similar. And so this is like things I went through. I went through like the learning Dart basically website, and like with Flutter. And these are like the most important things that I found about Dart specific programming. And so yeah, basically anything in a variable is an object, and so that's why it's like object-oriented programming. This is like basically a definition. And so null is the only object that does not implement object, like the class object. So it's strongly typed, and you can have like annotations, which are basically just like, say you wanted to override a method, you could type at override. I think it's an error because there's nothing there. But anyway, so yeah, then the other thing is, I think probably they were inspired by like TypeScript or something, and they were like, oh, we need null safety because that makes sense. So basically what that does is you can't initialize, I'm sorry, you can't declare variables without initializing it if you have null safety, and so like I set that to true. And yeah, you'll see like in documentation, they use question mark. If you're using null safety and you want it to be null, then you could use a question mark. Like it would look something like this, like oops, and question mark cat equals, or actually just that. And yeah, I'm saying it's not being used. And then yeah, so the generic types very similar to Java, right? So basically, generics meaning like you can use classes as like kind of a filler. You'll see it like sometimes in Java you'd see it like of T, and that just means there's like any objects that can be used there. I mean any classes. And so functions are tied to a class with static instance. So that's very similar. This is different. You use an underscore in front of an identifier to make it private. We'll get into that later actually. No curve. Anyway, so yeah, variables and types. So what you'll see actually very commonly, they use var, which is kind of annoying, but var, it's like basically any type, kind of. And so var can change, right? So you can say like var cat equals and then like 0, but that obviously makes no sense, right? Because this is an int. But a lot of people will say var. Anyway, it's because, you know, later you can print cat, and you can also change cat to be cat and print cat. So, wait, what? Interpreting package. Is this not how you set a string? Oh, shoot. Cannot be. Oh, okay, my bad. Actually, you can't change it once it's been declared. But see, that's why it's confusing, because this should just be an int. But it just takes the value of an int when you set it. So yeah, well, basically what I'm saying is you probably should just avoid using var. But anyway, you'll see it a lot, and that's why I included it. You can also have object, and so since string extends from objects, or to objects, you can use it as well to declare a string. And you can also just be explicit. And like I said before, uninitialized values are null unless like you have null safety on. And so yeah, does anyone know? Var is more like auto in C++. That's, yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. So anyway, so yeah, does anyone have any answers for this? What do they think will be printed here? Error. Okay, so that's one answer. Does anyone else have any other answer? Null. Okay, yeah, so those were the two answers that I wanted, right? Because it will print error, and that's only if you have this on, and it will print null if you don't. So yeah, that was a kind of a trick question. Anyway, so yeah, this is what I was saying before. With null safety, it won't compile. Without null safety, sorry, this will print null. That's what you guys said in the chat. So remember to initialize your variables. Okay, so now we're going to go into final and const. So this is kind of similar to JavaScript's finals and const. So final variable means that it can only be set once, and a const variable means that compile time constants, right? So it's very similar to like what you'd see in like const of JavaScript, right? So let's see, instance variables can be final, not const, and yeah, once you change it to const, you can't actually change the value. So yeah, I wasn't saying much here because it does get slightly tricky. So I will go into it in a second. So let's say that you had like a final int and we called it answer. And we said it was 42 because haha funny. Anyway, and then we just printed it, right? So what this is saying, it's saying that this int is final, meaning you can't change it. So if we try to answer plus plus, it actually doesn't even let you run it. It's a compile time error. Okay, so if we ran it right without the error, boom, 42. So let's say we wanted const, boom, also 42, right? So it's kind of very similar, but we'll see later why it's actually different. Same issue. So yeah, basically, when you define a variable like this with final or const, you can't change it. So let's say that sorry, 1 second. Okay. So yeah, let's say that we wanted to do this. So this is fine, even though that null safety is on. We're just defining, like declaring the variable. So let's say, whoops, let's say that we print answer. Of course, that's an issue because we haven't used it. So let's say we set it. And we'll get that you can print it. But let's say we change it to const. Boom, there's an error. So this is the issue. This is kind of like the main difference, in my opinion, between const and final and Dart. So you can't, when you have const, like this is the only line that you can actually change anything about the variable. But we haven't defined it. With null safety, this is an issue. And so you have to make sure for const that you only set it once, and you have to actually set it while defining it. And so, but for final, you don't have to do this. And so that's why, like, if you have an instance variable, right? Like, say if you had a class with an instance variable, you'd want to, and you only set it once, you would want to set it like this. You'd say like final int ants, like as your, well, I guess underscore ants technically, but you'd have that as your instance variable. And then like within some other method, you'd set it to something. That's pretty common. Or you could just set it here, either way. And so, yeah. So I guess I can try writing this question for you guys. So let's say that we had defined it with final, right? And we said answer 2 is equal to 2. And we said print answer 2. So we know that answer 2 will error if I tried setting it again. But how many errors do you think there actually would be? Two. Okay, let's try it. Answer 2 plus plus. So yeah, there's actually only one because, like I said, it's compiling, like it's a compile time error, right? So yeah, that's just kind of the point of that. And so yeah, if I change this to const though, how many errors do you think there would be? One. So actually this time think there's actually two. Yeah, because like I said before, you have to actually like with null safety, you have to actually like declare it. Like you have to say is equal to 20, right? Now I'd get rid of that error, and then you'd have the error also define, I mean, reinitializing it. And so yeah, sorry, Kuno. Yeah, and then so just like last example, and we'll move on. So let's say we had a list, and we'll get into like what a list is soon, like very soon. And so let's say that you had a list, but you wanted the array, this means array, to be constant, meaning that you can't actually change it. So these are some cool people. Write in the chat any cool people you want me to include. I'll include everyone here, because that's pretty cool. And then we're also gonna, Carrot, all right. And we're also gonna include Carrot and Async, and you know, anyone watching it later. No, I'm good. Anyway, so let's say we had this, right? So this is totally fine. I just spelled people wrong because, yeah. But anyway, this is totally fine. This is like, yeah, I mean, you can do this. And let's say we printed, yeah. And so the difference with const here is that you can't actually modify this array. And so let's say we tried to do, like we tried to add, copy poll. Yes, let's say we tried to add like me, right? Boom, that's going to be an error, I believe, because it's const. Yeah. So just to prove like without const, I would be a cool person. That's kind of awesome. But yeah, see. So basically, it was kind of confusing in the documentation because it made it seem like the default is const, but it's actually not. And so, yeah, basically, if you have const here, you can't modify this array with like add or remove at. These are all specific to art. And so yeah, that was basically all I wanted to show with const and final. And there will be a question about this later. This will be on the exam. So just by the way. Okay. So yeah, this is, we'll give the slides later because right now if I give the slides, it's like too easy for the quiz. So yeah, but yeah, I mean the Kahoot. So yeah, this is kind of what I was saying before, right? Const versus no const. With no const, you can add. And yeah, okay. So moving on here, we're going to types. And so there's actually not too many types. And so under numbers, we have int and double, right? So these, I'm sure you could look up how many bytes are in an int and how many bytes are in a double, but basically double is a lot longer than int. There might be, I don't think there's a long actually, but there might be. And yeah, we got strings like we saw before. Booleans, you don't say Boolean, you say bool for defining one. And you know, lists are arrays. Sets and maps we'll get into later. Runes are kind of strange. We won't get into these later. And symbols also kind of strange. And then null. And null, like I said, was the kind of odd man out. So with these types, so lists are arrays. Yeah, basically. So yeah, like I said before, right? This is a list of string. So this is a generic, right? This is what I was saying before. List takes in, you can put it like int, you can put string, bool, you can put in other classes. That's kind of the point of these angle brackets. It's to make this generic. And so yeah, when you have a list like this, it's like an array, like backed by an array. So anyway, so yeah, let's say you needed to typecast, like you see that in other languages, pretty similar, but you use the keyword as. You can use is to see if it like is this type of. Like in other languages like JavaScript, you use the keyword type of. It's very similar. And then is not, of course, is just like the opposite of is. Okay. So yeah, like someone was in the chat was hinting at, right? Is there a for each? So yeah, well, I can show that 1 second though. So the lists are very similar. They're backed by an array, and you can use for in is kind of similar to for each. So yeah, like I can show that real quick if you would like. So let's say let's not make this constant anymore. I don't like that. Let's say we had this, right? If we wanted to print all of them, we could just say like I is equal to 0, very similar to other languages, right? So cool people dot length I plus plus, and then we just said, you know, print cool people of I. And of course, this will print, you know, them in succession rather than a whole array. Oh, whoops. I mean, yeah, it comes before this print statement, but there's also another way that someone was hinting was, say you wanted to do string I in cool people. So basically what this is saying is I becomes the value, like each value in this array, right? So we could say print I. And it does the same thing, right? It's just twice. So yeah, that was a good question. Okay, there's also other operations you could do with list. I think I get to them later, but if not, remind me. But one of them is like, actually no, I do get to them later, just kidding. So now we're gonna learn about spread. This is one of them, that is later. Can it be for var in? So this is what Garrett was saying with like auto, very similar. I believe it would be the same result, yeah. So yeah, that's, you know, maybe a good reason to use var is if this is like a super long type. This is like a super long type, right? Then you're like, oh, I don't want to type that again. So you use var. Like, I guess that's fine. But yeah, so no, this is not the peanut butter. This is an operator, very similar to in React. And so basically what it does is, sorry, there's an airplane. It's very loud. But basically, it will like implant this each member of this array into a new one. So like in this example array, we have just names Mario and Luigi. So let's say that we wanted to add Peach, right? Because why not? And so let's say, you know, they're like, names, just names, not cool enough. We also need places. And you can make a new variable names places, and you just use a spread operator, right? And this will implant this here. So what would this print? Do we think? Mario, Luigi, Peach, Mushroom Kingdom. Yeah, exactly. So I'm just gonna put that here. Whoops. That here. Yep. So yeah, that's basically what this operator does. Okay, let's keep going. So sets. I mean, there's not really much to say about them. It's pretty similar to most other languages, and it's also generic, so you can put strings, ints, bools, other classes. And so this is not JavaScript JavaScript object notation. It may look like that, but this is like a Dart set. And so, yeah, basically it's like kind of like a hash set. So in this example, we have we have weblang and languages. And languages is just set to the empty set, which is not null. And I believe. And so we add English to the languages, and then there's a method called add all, which will add basically all of the other array, set. And then you could print it and you'd get English, JavaScript, and Dart. Okay, so maps. This is similar to the JSON JavaScript object notation. And so maps are objects associating keys and values. So for example, right, if we wanted to access Mario in this map, we would say M of Mario, right? So let's say we wanted to create a Peach in this map. We would just say M of Peach equals cool. And yeah, Bowser's not cool. Big sad. Okay, so moving on, we have functions. And so kind of strangely, it's not that strange because everything is an object, right? Because this is object right? So functions are objects, right? In Dart, I'm going to show what a named parameter is because it's extremely common. That's basically what you're going to be doing everywhere is just passing in name parameters. And so that's kind of the most important part of functions to learn from this, this entire day, is what is a name parameter. And so a name parameter is basically just when you call the function, you say the name of it and you pass the value rather than just saying hello and then cat. You'd have to say hello name : cat. And so the reason this is so common is because in Flutter, right, there's so many parameters that you can pass in to make the tree. And so you'll see when we get into it, but app bar is kind of the default, the outermost layer. And so what you pass into app bar is all of your content. And so you can pass in a title, and the value of the title is text, right? My app, whatever. And you'll learn about this later. This is trailing commas technically, but that's okay. So yeah, in this small example, right, we have hello and then name. This is the default. And so yeah, you have to use curly braces for name parameters. So the interesting thing about name parameter is that they're optional. So you don't have to pass a name. You'd still get hello, and then this would say name. The $ is from formatting strings. It's kind of similar to the F in Python, I think. Well, not really, actually, I guess. But it's a formatted string. And so you have to use back tildes. And yeah, basically anything after this $, you can put $ squiggly brace, name squiggly brace. It's the same thing. And it will be replaced by whatever you pass in. So you'd have multiple. You can have positional parameters as well, which means they are required and you do have to pass them in. And so yeah, I think that's about all I want to say about this. And then another feature of Dart is very similar to ES6, JavaScript. But it's not the same. Actually, it is different. It's really annoying because I prefer the JavaScript version. But basically, you just use an arrow, which is an equal sign greater than, and you pass it squiggly brace and then whatever you're returning. So what you'll see in a bunch of Flutter programs is so void is return type, main. Oh, I think somebody left their yeah, thank you. So yeah, void is a return type. Main is just the name of the method. It's the method that's called in the beginning of Flutter. And you pass it run app and my app. And my app is basically just something you'll be creating in Flutter. So yeah, you'll see the syntax, it looks kind of strange, but it's because of the parameters. And you don't actually need the arrow to do anonymous functions. which really bothers me. I feel like you should, but you don't, so it's kind of strange. But in this example, what we're doing is we're making a method called print people, passing in an item, and we're using that syntax I was using before, but with a curly brace. And yeah, we're basically just going through this list that we made called cool people, right? That's what we made in the beginning. And we're just going through printing its index and item. And then in this one, we're using an anonymous function to do it. So in this one, we have to say cool people.for each, which somebody mentioned earlier, and we just pass in the function. And it will do all this. But in this example, you actually can do it anonymously. You don't have to say print people. You can just say we're passing in an item, that's string, and that's really all you have to say. And you know, if you are familiar with JavaScript, it's actually very similar to the next one where you can do it in one line with the arrow. So yeah, it ain't much, but it's honest work. Okay, so yeah, next we're going to get into classes. And so, by the way, does anyone have any questions first before we continue? Okay, so yeah, basically classes are exactly what you would expect from other languages. You use dot to refer to instance variables. You inherit from superclasses. And yeah, there's constructors and default constructors. In Dart, you can use colon to, it's kind of similar to C++ syntax for default constructors. And yeah, so we will keep going. Okay. So yeah, classes are kind of large, and we're going to go through a small class. Okay, so let's say you wanted a user class, right? Okay, so user is going to have some attributes. Does anyone have any ideas for any attributes? I'm just going to add some that I think makes sense. Here we go. Username, SSN. I mean, sure. Okay, I guess it would be what Bool likes to code. Actually, I'm thinking, should SSN be an int or actually, I guess let's just make it an int just because why not? Oh yeah, see, I'm already forgetting things. We need to use underscore for private variables. So yeah, SSN. I'm just gonna say what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know if there's a 0 here. There might be. Bool likes to code. And so we're just going to have the default of true for that one. And yeah, so notice how it's, oh, whoops, I guess it is small. Okay, and so yeah, basically what we're saying here is this class has instance variables, and they are defaulted to these default values. And so the first thing I'm going to go over is a constructor, so that we can actually make this user. And so this is like the extremely familiar syntax. Right. So ints, bool, say you, I'm just going to say I like to code. Sure. Should probably use camel case. Okay. And then, you know, this is basically I'm showing this because you'll see there is a much easier way to do this that I would definitely recommend taking up because this is so tedious. Okay. And underscore likes to code. Okay, so this is basically how you could make a user. Say we set user Right, and you don't have to use the new keyword. So let's say we made a username Garrett. Actually, we'd probably use lowercase, right? And so this is different than Java, right? You don't have to say new to define it. So his username is going to be, what should his username be then? Like Gare. Wait, what the heck? I've been zero. Sorry, Gare. And say his SSN is 2. Okay, and then he does like the code. Okay, so basically what we can do is, so now we've created Garrett, right? But we don't have a way to like display Garrett in any way. So it's like, why are we doing it, right? So what we can do is make an instance method, right? And let's say that this, so Garrett wanted to log in, or sorry, actually well, yeah, let's do print user instead. So let's say we wanted the users to be able to be printed, right? So basically what I want to shorten it because I like it better this way. But basically we could just have this type of format where say underscore username, we have the arrow function and we need a semicolon as well. So let's see. Is it, sorry, I think it actually might be this. Okay, my bad. There we go. Okay. So yeah, this is the formatting strings I was talking about before. You do actually need this. Okay. Say like hi. That was a little frustrating, but it's okay. So if you run it, nothing happens, right? So you have to actually call this. So what we would do is Garrett.print user. And yeah, so I was confused because in JavaScript, you have to use the tilde. I mean, not the tilde, the tick. But in Dart, you just use the quotation mark. Okay, so yeah, that's cool. Then we can print Garrett, right? And so yeah, basically this was like way too much code, in my opinion, to just be setting things. So what you can do instead is use a colon, and you would just say, like you'd have commas here. Oops. It's like so unnecessary to have all of these be so many lines. And then boom, you have a like 6-line class. And then, so going back here, we're gonna head back to what somebody had mentioned before about inheritance. And so, as Garrett was saying before, all classes are interfaces, and when you want to implement an interface, you use implements. And when you do that, you have to implement every single attribute. And then extends is to it's for like superclass, subclass type thing. And so let's go back here. I guess let's say that we wanted, a class hack member. And I'm not using camel case because it's a class. And, what's different about any hack member? Like, what do we want to include for hack member. And it includes, so it extends the user, right? So it inherits all of these things already. And it also inherits the, oh no, it doesn't, sorry. You have to call the default constructor, but yeah. So one could be like, okay, favorite editor, right? That's actually pretty good. And the default is going to be, I don't want to trigger anyone here, so somebody put in chat, what is their favorite Vim? Okay. I was actually going to do Vim just because, but I was like, nah. So yeah, like I was saying before, you actually don't inherit the, like you have to implement the your own constructor. And so we did that. And so yeah, it's actually kind of really annoying because you could just call super on everything that is here. So you could just do this and then colon super. And then you name SSN and you like to code. You do need a semicolon. Okay. So obviously you shouldn't have your variable names be this this long, but it's okay. Isn't used? Wait, what? Did this wrong? Okay, that is kind of strange, actually. I guess we should print out more than this. $. Underscore SSN. Okay, so right now, let's try to create a hack member, and let's try to print it. So, wow, Garrett is also Microsoft Word. Interesting. I mean, I know you're talking about favorite editor, but I'm just gonna, he's also gonna be a hack member. I almost put hack member, but that's okay. Actually, I probably should have done that. So anyway, yeah, you pass in the same type of arguments, right? Because all we're doing here is calling super, and super will just pass in to this constructor, Google Docs. Google Docs as a coding editor. Interesting, interesting. And so let's SSN is going to be 0. And Google Docs does not like to code because that's kind of Google drawing. Interesting. So yeah, let's see Microsoft Word dot print user. Whoops. So you may be thinking, oh, why the heck does this work? And so that's a great question. So you need to remember that we inherit everything from what we extended from. So we inherited this method. And so it might be strange, like, oh, why, like, why does this work? Even though like this could have different variables, right? This could have another instance variable called, called underscore favorite editor. And so really it's just because it doesn't matter what's here. Whoops. Sorry. Why is this documentation thing here? It doesn't matter what ends up here. It just matters that everything within this class is in this method. So yeah, that's basically how you can use super. Now let's say that you wanted in, I don't know why this is so strange, but I'm just gonna keep ignoring that. Let's say that you actually wanted a different constructor, right? So let's say this user is very old. right? And it only takes in, or wait, so we had each equal to 0. Okay, and let's say that you wanted to set only its age property, right? Then you could just say int and then age, and we say underscore age equals to age, but of course this is the old way, and so it takes up a lot of room, but we're just going to ignore that. And so yeah, it's not the reason that it's blue is because it's not being used in the code anywhere. It's just being set. And so basically how you would call this, this is a constructor. And so you would say like user, okay, boomer. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Boomer.isOld. Say 100. It's a very, very old, wait, what? Expected identifier. Sorry, this is supposed to be equal to user.isOld, I believe. Okay. And so if we try printing this, you're like, what the heck? Boomer has no other qualities other than its age. But what we, sorry, not print. I meant boomer dot print user. Right. But the thing is, this is now Mario because its default is Mario. Right. It also has a system here, and it's true, does like the code. Doesn't print the age anywhere though. So another thing I wanted to mention, what I was saying before about final, it's pretty typical. You'd want to do this, right? If you didn't have a default, I don't know what is up with this cursor, but yeah, like if you didn't set the default in the constructor, you would want to use, like, if we just had this, for example, right? Oh, right, you have to initialize it actually, but typically you would use final to do that. Like if you wanted to have a default constructor and you didn't actually ever want to change this username. Okay. And so, let's see, it's not final. Oh, my bad. This is so laggy. I have no idea why. It's very frustrating. Anyway, so yeah, that's basically, does anyone have any questions about that? Like about inheritance or, goodness, or like default constructors and making your own constructor? Nope. Okay. So we're gonna move on then to to async. So the issue here is that with async in Dartpad, it's like kind of useless because the point of async is very similar to like promises and async and await in JavaScript. It's basically a way to execute code non-sequentially. And you're going to want to do this when calling a database or requesting from a website. So it's extremely useful, but for some reason in Dartpad, it's just kind of bad because there's no practical use in Dartpad. So yeah, but basically the idea is if you ever wanted to run code that waited for something, you would say like, you would make the function asynchronous. You'd say like async. So what that would look like is something like this. Like if you said async, it's a keyword. And if you did something like var cad equals and then like http.get, right? Something like that. Basically what this would do, if HTTP existed, was it would, wait, sorry, actually I guess we'll wait. It would wait for this to finish, and then whatever this returns as is what cat is set to. So it's extremely useful. And you're going to use it a lot, honestly, if you're using a database in your projects. And yeah, so the Future API, it's very similar to promises. Basically, they're just, you can use Future to basically there's this way to resolve futures. You'd create a future, something like that. And there's like methods within it. And you could just be like future.resolve, something like that. And what that would do is whenever you use a future, you'd be able to wait for it with a wait. And it will basically just do the same thing, honestly. So yeah, but I do highly recommend looking into it. I didn't really want to go into it too much for this workshop because you can't actually use it in Dartpad the way I would want to. But yeah, I can show like a quick example of what it could look like. Like let's say that, so let's say that you had an asynchronous method, and basically what this would mean is you'd want to like return and then like some request, and this is how you could make like a call. So you'd say like like a wait for, and but yeah, obviously this is very useless because you're not actually waiting for anything. But yeah, like in this code, you would have like code for database call, something like that, right? And then you would return whatever it returns. And so yeah, that's kind of the basis of what a wait does. It just waits for an asynchronous method. And you can use .then, very similar to promises. Okay, and this is kind of what I was saying. So yeah, you can also, there's a .delayed, which is similar to what the .resolve I was talking about. This is how you can like simulate a an actual database call. So, but I do find it kind of not good. And so yeah, we could play a Kahoot right now. I'm gonna pause the recording just really quick. Okay, so we just did a Kahoot basically, and so yeah, for next time we're gonna go over like actually using Flutter. So please, like, we're gonna send in the Discord like installation type like instructions, and so yeah, Dart actually has like so much more to it than what we covered, and so yeah, like we didn't completely cover dealing with null and null safety. It just kind of like defaulted to null safety true. But yeah, we also didn't go into too much depth of generics. There's also assert. There's actually a lot more, but don't worry about that because you don't really need to know that for Flutter. Flutter is about using widgets to make apps. So yeah, see you guys next time.